Look, I don't know what happened to my TikTok feed, but I've been getting all these like witch testimonies, which hey, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. But I just had never really thought about witches. I knew witches was like a real thing, but I don't be sitting around thinking about witches on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying? Now that Halloween is, basically here, I like all these like witch stuff is now like popping up. I don't know. This title was crazy though. It says second generation white witch. White witch sounds crazy. Don't get mad at me. I'm not calling her a white witch. She called herself a white witch. I don't know what a white witch is. I don't know what it is. That sounds crazy. But it's a second generation white witch turned follower of Jesus. My testimony. I think her name is Ashley Jones. So I think on TikTok it's called Your Spiritual Big Sis. I have not watched a single second. Well, I watched one literal second of this video. I don't know what to expect. So let's just go into it. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I think we're just going to go there. I think we're just going to talk about it. How I went from a second generation white witch to a follower of Jesus Christ and on fire for God. So for as long as I can remember, I have always felt things, experienced things, seen things, heard things that weren't typical for anyone else and didn't understand where that was coming from or why. I think the first time that I remember like identifying myself and speaking that word curse over myself as a witch was when I was probably like 7. I had watched Matilda for the first time, and in that movie I watched this really young girl. I was probably the same age as her when I started watching.
What happened? What happened? Them witches got to my Wi-Fi? Hold on. Let me reset this. I paid way too much how the Wi-Fi be cutting out like this. Them witches on my Wi-Fi. Hold on. Let me reset this. What the heck happened? Hold on. Stick with me. The real ones are going to stick with me. The real ones are going to stick with me. All right, let's go back here. Go here. Let me X out of this. Go here. Okay, we're back.
I think we're just going to talk about it. How I went from a second generation white witch to a follower of Jesus Christ and on fire for God. So for as long as I can remember, I have always felt things, experienced things, seen things, heard things that weren't typical for anyone else and didn't understand where that was coming from or why. I think the first time that I remember like identifying myself and speaking that word curse over myself as a witch was when I was probably like 7. I had watched Matilda for the first time, and in that movie I watched this really young girl. I was probably the same age as her when I started watching it. She was going through the same things that I would experience. She would like feel things, see things would happen, and she never could identify it until she came out as a witch. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I am. I got into a relationship with someone who was extremely abusive on all fronts: physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, just awful. And it stripped me of every identity that I thought I had. Every bit of what I thought I was or who I was stripped from me. One of those relationships where I just felt like nothing at the end of it. By the time I was 18 years old, I had no self-worth. Thought I was completely unworthy of love, just worthless to the absolute core. And I just didn't have any identity anymore. And so when I was about 13 years old, my grandmother started to be really outward around me about her identity as a good witch, a white witch. And I remembered, like, oh my gosh, I remember that movie. I remember Matilda finding her identity. My grandmother's telling me this is her identity, and I resonate so much with both of them. She's right. This is for me. And she would constantly speak that over me, that word curse that I had come into agreement with at 7 years old. She was now speaking over me through a generational curse, through a curse on my bloodline to, in Satan's eyes, hopefully and eventually pass through me to my kids. She was speaking over me. You have the gift. You have the ability. You're operating in light. Don't ignore it. Don't push it away. Don't be scared. It's good. And so I started to really take on that identity. It started with very innocent seeming things, right? Like I said, you know, the Bible says that Satan comes disguised as an angel of light. And so that's seemingly exactly what it was. It was just light work, right? It started with zodiac signs. It started with astrology and birth charts. It started with horoscopes. It started with crystals, and then it went into manifestation, and then it went into the Enneagram, and just these things that seem so innocent, right? Wolves disguised in sheep's clothing, really is what it was. And it wasn't until maybe 15 that I started to get really into the craft. 15 years old, I got my first spell book, which was passed down to me generationally through my grandmother. I started doing spells and got into much deeper things like astro projecting, opening my third eye. I was traveling in my dreams. I was just absolutely consumed with finding that next level of consciousness, becoming my highest self, awakening my inner goddess, whatever that was. I was trying to become my own god, trying to paint my own future. And along with that really deep witchcraft of tarot cards and Ouija boards and all these things, these portals that I was opening every day, came absolute torment. I started to experience things that I could only imagine in the depths of hell, to be honest with you. I started experiencing intense sleep paralysis. I remember one night I woke up in the middle of the night around 3 a.m., which I'm sure I'm not the first person that you've heard say that. There's a reason for that. The 3 a.m. mark is a way to mock the Trinity, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. I would wake up constantly from knocks on my window, 3 knocks. I always saw things in multiples of 3s, but I woke up one night and I couldn't move. My body was like chained to my bed. My mind was awake. My eyes were open, but I couldn't move. And I heard laughing, bouncing off the walls, just like bouncing off the walls in my room. It was a little girl laughing. And I could hear voices over top of each other, like coming on to me, like kind of like grabbing at me like that. And they were saying like, we got her, laughing. And I remember I couldn't wake up. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything. And I was stuck there. And it felt like I was stuck there for hours. Really, I'm sure in the grand scheme of things, it was only a couple minutes, but that's only one experience that I had. There was another time where I was sitting in my living room meditating. I was sitting in a yoga pose, unknowingly channeling Hindu gods, literally right there in the middle of my house. And I was starting to see in the spirit what was in front of me. Like I was there with my eyes open and I wasn't. My eyes were closed and I could see my entire living room. I could see my house just as it was in the physical realm, but I watched a demon walk from my hallway, which is on like the top right hand side of where I'm seeing my vision, walk through the living room, stand right in front of me. And this thing was probably 10 feet tall, this black, dark, like lanky looking, like almost like an alien, no face, just stood right in front of me, got down in my face and was like this. And just looked at me like that for what seemed like hours. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was stuck. I was so oppressed by this spirit that I literally physically couldn't move. There were so many times like this, and it even started to affect people that were outside of what I was practicing. My roommate calls me one night, 3 a.m., as I'm having panic attacks every night at 3 a.m., anywhere from 3 to 6 hours long.
Wow.
She called me and I was like, why is she awake? It's normal for me to be awake at this hour, but why is she awake? And she calls me and says, you need to come in here right now. There's somebody in my room. And I was like, what? There's someone in your room and you want me to come in there and you're calling me on the phone? Like, this doesn't make sense. And so I ran in there, opened the door, and the look on her face, I'll never forget it. She told me later that when I opened that door, the person, the demon that was standing in her room flew. Like it went out of the window as soon as she saw me open the door. And I asked God later in my walk, like, why did that happen? And he exposed to me that demon no longer needed to be in her room when you entered it, because I was so oppressed by so many demons. I was being absolutely tormented. I would see things.
Oh my gosh. That demon no longer needed to be in the room as soon as you entered it. Think about that for a second. Yo, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my goodness.
Hear things. I was just consumed by the spirit guides that used to like direct me in light and love, were now nasty beings. They were mean to me. They told me to do awful things. I would see things. Like I would do that all the time. My friends would be like, what are you looking at? I'm like, you didn't see that? I was absolutely controlled by the demonic at this point. And I thought that I was being awakened to a new level. But really, I was being absolutely tormented by depression, anxiety, sleep paralysis, demonic encounters every day. And I could sit here and tell you guys all of the horrible things that this brought into my life, how much I was seeking to find identity in that, and how much the New Age and witchcraft told me that I would reach this place where I would have abundant peace and light and operate in goodness, and I never felt it. I was seeking in those things everything that God could give me, everything that came from Jesus, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace. I was seeking for it in witchcraft, and I was promised that I would eventually get there and never did. And that's what the devil wants you to think, is that you will eventually arrive, and you won't. These things can only be found in Christ. And once I found them, he delivered me. He set me free. Love, joy, and peace were not something that I was striving for. It's something that I had eternally, and Satan could no longer take those things from me. He absolutely changed my life. He took every single thing that I was struggling with, the torment, and he sent it back to the gates of hell where it came from. And I promise you, he will do the same for you. Yeah, I think.
Wow. There's a lot that she said right there. Yo, can I just start with this? I don't want to get too far off the rails. But she said, so she had this calling because, like, I guess her grandma was a witch and stuff like that. And her grandma wanted to pass it down to like her, and, she was saying like, oh, you're a good witch, right? You're a good witch. So like, you're a white witch because you're a good witch. I'm kind of offended by that. So what's the bad witch? The black witch is a bad witch? Hold on. I guess they're all bad, right? There's no such thing as a good witch. There's no such thing as a good witch. It's all deception. It's all evilness. It's all wickedness. It's so interesting because you look at all these different things, like the spiritual realm is a real thing. The spiritual realm is a real thing. And a lot of people don't realize that, and I said this before and I'll say it again. We all have a spiritual desire. And if you don't feel that, desire with Jesus Christ, you're going to find other ways to fill that spiritual desire. I remember before I, truly gave my life to Christ, I was heavy into like New Age, like heavy into law of attraction, meditation, different like yoga and stuff like that. But I didn't really know what I was doing. It was all wrapped in the veil of like self-improvement. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. I just thought I was improving myself. They said, oh, if you meditate, then you'll have, less depression, less anxiety. If you do these affirmations, then you'll attract success and you'll be able to, do X, Y, and Z. I just thought it was just like, self-improvement. But then what I realized is that it was all rooted in a very, very deeply selfish place, a place that had no room for a true relationship with God. And I started to realize, like, why am I doing these things just to get stuff here on this earth? Right? What I want is true healing. I think that me doing this meditation, I used to sit like every single day on my couch at like 4:00 in the morning. There's this like meditation thing on YouTube. I would play this meditation video. It was like 15 minutes long. And then in the middle of it, it has like certain affirmations, like I am successful. I am powerful. I am the, I am like I'm the one who makes things happen type of thing. Like there's like all these affirmations. I used to sit there and listen to it like every day at like 4 a.m. And I'm sitting here thinking like, yo, I mean, I guess it's helping me a little bit, but it still feels so empty. I still don't feel like I found what I'm truly supposed to be doing. And then when I truly gave my life to Christ and found out how relational Jesus is, it was like, yo, it just clicked. Like everything I was doing before, all of that was so deeply selfish and really was demonic. It really was. So she's talking about, she would wake up every night at 3 a.m. and these demons would basically torment her. And it's so interesting because, this is why it's so important to pray, especially to pray in your house, over your house. It's so important to pray in the place that you live because, a lot of us are coming into homes. I mean, let's keep it real. It's hard to buy a home right now. A lot of us are like renting places, apartments, homes, townhouses, whatever it is. A lot of us are coming into homes where we don't know what the spiritual status of that home was prior to us coming in. We don't know if there was, some witches in there, playing with Ouija boards and summoning, you know, their gods, lowercase g's, and doing all this type of stuff. We don't know what the spiritual status of that home was prior to us coming in. And that's why it's so important for us to pray over our homes and to establish Jesus as the primary, only God in our home. That is the one that we serve. And it's so important to establish that because the spiritual realm is real. But man, now I'm just thinking, like, I don't want to go down this like witch wormhole, but it is very interesting because this is not the only video that I saw. I saw another testimony of this other former witch who gave her life to Christ. I may or may not react to that one too, but this one just popped up, so I wanted to watch it. Let me know what y'all think. Get in my comments. I'm out, y'all.